we spend a lot of time over these things, and that's not great. I started to hear from physiotherapists from all over the world telling me that they are dealing with, so they see the talk, and what they think is they're thinking about posture. They're thinking about kids hunching over their phones. People call it text neck or the eye hunch. We call it eye posture. They're saying that they're getting 15, 16-year-old boys with what they refer to as dowager's humps, which is this fixed thoracic stoop that you often see in elderly women, or less often now because nutrition has gotten better. They're seeing it in teenage boys and girls. That's how much time we are spending over those phones in that position. Is that affecting us? This is, by the way, a picture from South by Southwest of people waiting to go into a talk, not noticing that I'm taking their picture. So we did this study where we had people work for 5 minutes on one of these devices. They're randomly assigned, and we just have them do filler questionnaires. So remember the FAN study? It's sort of like that. So we don't really care about these questionnaires. What we care about is what happens after they're finished. And so after the experiment is over, the experimenter comes in and says, we're finished with the study. I need to take the device for the next person. I'm going to be back in 5 minutes to debrief you. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, please come get me. I don't want to waste your time. And there's a big clock on the wall, and they point to the time and say, if I'm not back by 1:37, come get me. And then they just leave the person in the room, in this little room alone with nothing. We've also confiscated their phones, so they have nothing to do. All we want to know is, are they assertive enough to go get the experimenter? When the only thing they had to look at is the clock. The black bar represents the percentage of people who come out and say, I'm waiting, can you please let me go, between the 5 and 10 minute mark. So only half of the iPhone users come out. At 10 minutes we have to go and release them from their prison cell. 94% of the desktop users come out, and you can see this is a linear relationship, right? So the bigger the device, and also we code for this, the more open your posture, the more assertively you behave after you've used that thing, just for 5 minutes, right? So something is going on here. Here's another one. This is correlational, and would like to know more about this, but we don't have a sleep lab, so I can't study this really in the way that I would love to study it. But do you sleep like this, or do you sleep like this? So people tend to vary in their across people in their sleep position, and you get about 40% of people sleeping in the fetal position. So that's a pretty big number, and then you've got the Usain Bolts at the end. And I have to say, these two often go together, right? Because there's a space issue here as well. So you might sleep with a sprawler and you're in the fetal position. But does that in any way reflect or influence the way we feel? Surely it must be a reflection of how you feel. But what we did is, for a couple of weeks, we had people every morning when they woke up, we were sending them we were pushing these surveys to them. They would circle the position they slept in. They were stick figures that we created. It was I think we had about 50 different stick figures. And we had them just do a quick, what we call a state anxiety scale. So how anxious are you feeling right now? And what we found was that people who woke up in an expansive upper body position were far less anxious. Now, the lower body did not matter. It wasn't as clean as we thought we had, sort of hoped it would be, but there's some pattern going on there. Now, it's not easy to change the way you sleep, but you can change what you do before you put your feet on the ground, right? So if you wake up and you're all hunched up, sort of the way I am, with your fists clenched, spread out, spend a minute just stretching out in your bed before you put your feet on the ground, reset yourself. Another possible mechanism is what we call the relaxation response. So this is a very well-studied phenomenon, and what happens is that when we breathe deeply and slowly, it calms basically the vagus nerve, which is telling your body that you are in the rest and digest state. So when you expand, your breathing changes. So what I see now is that posture is confounded with breathing. And that's one of the other things that I believe is happening. So when you're holding expansive postures, you're breathing better, more efficiently, more deeply, and that's probably calming you down through the vagus nerve. The third mechanism, and this is very new, is that When we engage the core muscles, which also is required for things like Pilates and yoga and expansive postures, you're activating a cortical pathway that controls the adrenal medulla, and the adrenal medulla is controlling the release of stress hormones. So in other words, when you do Pilates, when you do expansive postures, it's reducing the release of epinephrine, which is like adrenaline, right? So it's calming you down. So the bottom line is that expanding causes you to feel powerful, confident, assertive, but also strong, happy, and calm, right? So it's changing the way that you feel. It's changing your subjective reality, which is changing your actual reality. And we know that when you feel powerful, it makes you behave in a different way. Expanding activates approach, and shrinking activates inhibition. Last study I'm going to show you, and this is for any of you who have sisters or daughters or who are teachers or anyone who cares about girls and gender equality. People often say to me, how do we get, I'll talk to big business audiences and they'll say, well, how do I get women to speak up in the boardroom? Or how do I, and I've come to feel that the best way to do that is to start much earlier. I mean, we need to do better earlier. And I'll show you why I think this. Gender is correlated with expansiveness. So men are more likely to use expansive posture than women, well established, not, this is not surprising. I think anyone would probably say that's probably true. The question is it innate or is it learned? Because one of the things I notice is that when kids are younger, before they hit middle school, our daughters are running around with their arms up in the air and doing cartwheels and not worrying about being contractive and dainty. So I noticed that when my son hit middle school, his female friends started to shrink. They started to sort of wrap themselves up. I saw like a lot of this, pulling their sleeves down over their hands, doing this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what happened to this kid who was so vibrant and vivacious and, out there and bold? What is going on? Because the boys weren't doing that. The girls were doing that. So I decided we should do a study on this by asking young kids how they associate these things with gender. So this gets a little tricky because little kids are hard it's hard to ask them questions and have them understand the task. So what we decided to do is show them pictures of these wooden dolls, either in a contractive posture or an expansive posture. So they saw 16 pairs like this on an iPad. Now, we used two age groups, 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and we used them because 5 is the age that's been identified as the age at which kids start to really strongly gender identify. So they start to really identify with being a girl or being a boy. So if you see a change from age 4 to 6, that's telling you that that's something probably that they're learning, and especially at that critical age. So we show them these pictures and we just say, point to the boy, point to the girl. Now, I expected them to say, sorry, I'm losing my voice. I expected them to say, I don't get it. They look the same to me. What are you talking about? They did not ask that. They flew through this task, and this is what we found. At age 4, 75% showed a boy expansive bias. By age 6, 85% showed that bias. But more alarming, I think, is this. At age 4, only 13% had a perfect score. So thought that every single pair, in every pair, the expansive one was a boy. By age 6, that's approaching 50%. They're learning this. They are learning this association. And so, what I have to say about that is that we need to teach our daughters to expand, girls to expand before they hit that middle school age where they collapse like, a piece of paper rolled up around a pencil, to take up space, to express their ideas and to show their strength. This is, for me, this is where it's at, and this is where my research is headed, is trying to figure out how to deal with this, not just with girls, but with anyone who feels powerless. How do you start earlier? How do you do this? And I think that we also have to teach our kids to sit up straight, not to show respect to others, because let's be honest, kids don't do things because we tell them that it's a respectful thing to do to others. They do it because it's good for them. And the truth is, it is good for them. So I think the whole idea of sitting up straight needs to be tied to their own success and their own feelings, not so much to others. Just some images that I would like our daughters to see more of instead of, tiny little Barbie dolls. I would like them to see things like this. This is my friend Amy Purdy, who lost both her legs at 19 as a Paralympic bronze medalist. She came in second in Dancing with the Stars. Amazing human being who's so proud of her strength. As someone who almost sort of lost her body, she's so proud of having a strong body now. Images like this. This is a program called Stand Like a Superhero that a dad started. Great book called The Gutsy Girl for young girls, like teaching them how to feel more powerful. And these are just pictures from girls from around the world in workshops learning how to be powerful and have voice. This was done by my friend's daughter, and she was asked to draw a picture of what she wanted to look like going into second grade. She's kind of shy, and that's what she drew. And I love that, and I love the toenails on the side over here too. But I think that's a great idea, to have that idea of yourself in the future. These are girls who are bullied. So I hear from a lot of people running anti-bullying programs who are using this with kids for before they go to school in the morning. Not to go up to the bully and do this, right? Again, that's not the idea. The idea is it's for you. You do the haka for yourself. You don't do it to intimidate the other side. You do it to convince yourself. And my very favorite of all is Misty Copeland, who's the first Black woman to be promoted to principal dancer at American Ballet Theater. So I used to be a professional dancer and ballet dancer. I feel like I have to clarify that sometimes. It's come to mean different things. Anyway, ballet. And she is, I just think, an amazing role model. She was told, many times that she was not built for ballet because when she went through puberty and developed, curves and muscles and breasts like people should develop when they go through puberty, she was suddenly told, oh, now you're not built for ballet. You're not a toothpick anymore. So she kept almost quitting, getting back in the saddle, and now, she's, I think, probably one of the most well-known ballet dancers to have ever lived. And she carries herself unapologetically, with power and poise and pride and grace. So I just think she's a wonderful example because, you're taking one of the most feminine disciplines in the world and, showing power and beauty and grace through it. So more Misty Copelands, fewer Barbie dolls. Prepare with the big poses. Don't do it during the actual interview. Present with good open posture. You're not trying to be domineering. Obviously you would not go up to somebody at a table and lean over them in a way that's sort of alpha-ish, right? You want people to see that you're confident, but also that you're open and you're engaged and you're listening to them. Mind your posture throughout the day. So even when you're sitting, if you're walking, don't take little tiny steps, take long strides, swing your arms. Don't hunch over your phone. Sit back and hold it up. Do something else so that you're not hunching all day. And attend to their posture. And this is something I think is particularly relevant for this group. And I tell leaders all the time, it's not just about how you feel. It is about what you're seeing in their body language. If they start to shut down and turn away from you and wrap up, something happened, right? Something got broken. Some trust got broken. Maybe it had to do with you, maybe it didn't, but I would pause when you see that happen and try to figure out how to get them back again, right? How to rebuild that trust. Our bodies are changing our minds. They're changing the way that we feel about ourselves. We know that our minds change our behavior, and we know that our behavior changes our outcomes. Stop managing the impression that you're making on other people and on their minds, and start sort of managing and focusing on the impression that you're making on yourself. Because that's what other people see. That's what actually makes you more compelling and more convincing. I used to think of this as faking it till you make it. And I think of fake it till you make it as sort of, you fake it, you get through the thing, and then you're done. And you can go back to being yourself again. What I see now is that it changes people slowly over time, right? So they are faking it until they become that authentic, best version of themselves. This is a tiny, tiny little thing that you can do that can downstream lead to big changes. It is not a panacea, and it doesn't work overnight. It's not going to fix everything. But if you build these, if you layer these things together, and there are many others, this is not the only one, but if you layer them together, you get these big changes over time. So rather than setting a humongous goal and saying, I'm going to change overnight, just try these tiny little things so that you feel a little bit better, you leave feeling satisfied. Pictures of people, from people around the world, some of whom I've met, some of whom I haven't, but using this idea in different ways. And I'll leave you with this from Maya Angelou, one of my, I think, greatest heroes who overcame enormous challenges, who said, stand up straight and realize who you are, that you tower over your circumstances. And I'll stop there. And if there's any time for questions, happy to take them. If not, happy to let you go. Thank you.